folks, and welcome to Great Chesterford Junction Model Railway. And after my last video, I think there's been some interest in the trees that I've made recently, so I thought I'll do a bit of a tutorial on how I make my trees. Okay, so let's have a look at what we need and how we do it. Now the first thing we need is a jig. I got this idea off another guy I saw online many years ago, and he was just using a simple version of this to make pine trees. Well, I use it to make other types of trees. You can use it to make pine trees as well. But this is just a block of timber that's about 200 mils long. It's about 90 mils wide. And I've drawn a line up the centre, although you can't see it here at the moment. And that's a guideline to put these nails in. What you do is you put two nails at this end, either side of the line, wide enough to get your wire through. You follow it up, and then on the centre of the line I've put a nail in here, and I've cut the head off it. That's at 110 mil from the other nails, another one at 140 and another one at 180. I bang them in at roughly 45 degrees. It doesn't have to be accurate, but so 180 mils from there to there. That doesn't mean you get a 180 mil height tree, because once you start putting the string in, which we'll show in a minute, it stops about there, so you can swing this handle back around. And this handle is just a piece of aluminium bar that's bent at a right angle, a hole drilled in here and a screw put in, and it's a loose fit so that you can pull that over the top of the wire to hold it securely while you're working on it. So that's the jig. I then place the jig in my bench vise, but if you haven't got a bench vise, you could clamp it to your bench, or you could put it in a workmate or something like that, but you have to secure the jig, because later on you're going to have wire in here and you're going to be pulling against it, so it has to be secure. So even if you screw it down, if you put a screw through into your bench or something like that, but it has to be secure. The next stage is to get some wire, and this is just galvanized wire from my local hardware store, and that's about 0.8 of a mil in thickness, and so that's fairly fine, but it's strong enough to do the job. I then cut some wire approximately 400 mils long, or longer than the jig itself, and fold it in half, and you can see that it's got a bit of a loop at the end here. So let's fold it in half, and then if we're going to make a big tree, I'll just put it over the end there and take it down and put one piece of it under the aluminium keeper there and lock that on, and then just for the moment fold the other one out of the way like that. So we've got one piece of wire hanging down here. And to make my branches, you could use string. I first started out using string. This is hemp string, but it's quite laborious, because you've got to cut each branch as you go along, and you need a lot of branches. So then I got myself some hemp rope, and basically hemp rope is made up out of hemp string. So I cut my length of hemp rope that I would normally use, and then when you unravel that, you finish up with a whole bunch of hemp strings, and I'll show you how it works. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting it to about the same width as the timber, which is about 90 mils. So if I cut a piece off, I'll just cut a piece and I'll be back. So we'll just cut off a piece just to get my length. I mean, you don't have to cut it at 90 mils, but you know, that gives me bigger branches, and I can trim it down to make smaller branches. So if I cut a couple of pieces, so this really is a time saver, because I guess that's more than enough that I need there. So what we do is take that string out of the way, that rope out of the way, and then you just unravel it and you pull it apart bit by bit, and you finish up with all these individual strings. So it's as simple as that, and that's much easier than cutting individual lengths of string. So we go through that process until we've got enough of these suckers to use in our tree, and yeah, it's quite easy to do it that way. So yeah, as my dear old dad used to say, always do it the easy way, son. So I'll get those sorted out and we'll come back to the next step. I then start bringing my strings over to the wire and start laying them across the wire. It doesn't have to be absolutely accurate, but just lay them on there. And obviously the more you have it concentrated in one area, the more branches you're going to get there. So yeah, but just lay them on, and until you get to somewhere around the length of tree that you want. You don't have to come all the way down here, you can stop there if you want. It's up to you. You can make various trees, various sizes, because trees don't come all one size, and trees are not small either when you look at trees in real life. And that's one of the things that inspired me to have a go at this method, because a lot of the trees that you can buy are nowhere near the size of a real tree in scale. I thought, you know, there's some trees around our local area that are easy 60 feet tall, easy, and that's the same as a Mark 1 coach, a corridor coach or whatever. And if you stand a corridor coach up on your railway and look at the trees next to it, they're nothing. The commercial, most of the cheap commercial trees, unless you're spending a bit of money and getting on good sized trees. That might do for this one. I might add a couple more up the top here. So yeah, that'll do. Right, now what we do is we take that spare wire we had, and we're going to bring that over the top of those, back through those two nails at the end, and just lock that all together like that, just to hold it securely. Okay, what we do then, folks, is we'll get a drill and put the two ends of the wire into the drill chuck, and tighten the chuck around the wire. Then take up the tension on the wire whilst holding the drill, remove the release clip, and then we'll make sure that's tight first. Right. Then we start the drill slowly, and as it starts to spin here, we gradually lift it up at an angle until you feel you've got the wire twisted all the way to the end, which I think it is. Then we release the wire from the drill, and you've got this horrible mess. Now this is untangled pretty much, but you know, it's still not great as an armature for a tree, because the gaps in here are too large. And what I'll do now is I'll get a wire brush and drag it along this to sort of spread the fibres more and sort of make it more of a finer sort of branch, if you like, and increase the numbers of them. So I'll get onto it with the brush. Now the first thing I'll do is I'll just lay the tree on the jig here, and I'll bend the wire around one of the pins there at the end, and then I'll take, this is my wire brush, this is a pretty serious wire brush that you can get from your hardware store, and I start dragging it across the fibres. Just drag it up and you'll see that you start getting a whole heap of fibres in the brush. Don't worry about that, you've got to clean the brush out later though, eventually. But this tends to straighten the string and also make it a lot finer as well once you've done this. And I'll do that, and then I'll just turn it over and do the other side as well. Just give it a good, just be brutal with it, folks. Just be absolutely brutal. I think that'll probably do. So you can see what's come off it there. Scary, isn't it? Right. And now we go back to the old teasing it out again to make it look a bit more like a tree. So I'll start going through that process, and I'm going to make what I call a whole tree here, and not a background tree, because a background tree we would only tease the fibres out so that it was around only half a circle, if you know what I mean. The back would be flat. So if you want to put something up against the background, you do a flat tree. So I only tease the fibres out to the side and around to the other side. Whereas for this one, we're going to tease them out and try and get it to be a circular or a tubular tree. So I'll do a bit more of that and I'll get back to you. Right, so that's roughly what we got there. Now that bit of wire I bent at the end as well, I'm just going to cut that off as well, so I've got a straight piece of wire, and the reason for that will become obvious later on. But in the meantime, actually before I cut the wire off, I'll do a bit of shaping on this tree. So the branches on the top are a bit too large, so we'll give them a haircut and sort of just trim it up to what looks a reasonable shape. So just keep that one's a bit long. Until you get to what looks like a fairly consistent, or it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't do too much shaping on it. Just get to the point where you're happy with how it looks. So for me, that's going to do it there. Right, what I'll do then, folks, is I've got another little vise over here where I can put it in just to hold it. You could also do this by just pushing it into a piece of polystyrene or something like that. Then I get myself some polyfiber. This is the sort of stuff you would find in cushions. Also makes a good Santa Claus beard if you're inclined that way. But yeah, just some polyfiber. And we'll just move the tripod a bit closer here. So what I do is I peel off small pieces of this, very, very fine pieces, and just gradually spread it over these fibres here. And this is to sort of bulk up the tree a bit and give the flocking something extra to grip onto. Now what I'm going to do next, folks, is I'm going to spray this tree with a rattle can. I'm going to spray it brown, and once you spray the paint on, it makes it all stick together. So that's the reason for doing that. And yeah, so this takes a little while just to sort out. I'll just have to come around the other side here and add some on over here. And you know, it sticks quite easily to the branches. It's all very clingy and all very delicate at the moment. But once you spray this and the paint dries, it goes rather stiff. So it's good actually. It makes a good armature. So this is all about where you want the foliage to be and how dense you want the tree to look. We've got an open area here, so we might add a bit more in there, just like so, and put some down here at the bottom. Just add it in here and there until you think that you've got enough. Might just whack a bit in the back here. So yeah, that might do. Maybe a bit down the bottom here. And just sort of spread it across to the other branches to keep it intact. So there we go. So we're now ready to spray this thing. It's looking pretty ordinary there, isn't it? So what I will do is I'll take it outside to spray it, but I'll show you what I'm going to do before I take it out. But the first thing is I made myself up this holder. It's just an alligator clip, and it's clamped onto what used to be an old umbrella strut. So as you can see, the clip is a good distance away from my hand, and this is to hold, the clip is to hold the tree while I spray it, so it keeps it away from my hand. Plus I'll be wearing some rubber gloves anyway. The other thing is that I'll have a piece of polystyrene set up, and I'll show you that. Yeah, I've got a piece of polystyrene set up here so that when I bring the wet tree back in, I can just push the wire into that polystyrene, and that'll hold it securely until the armature dries. Right folks, this is just an El Cheapo rattle can, and it's Mission Brown. So I'll get myself set up and I'll take this tree outside to spray it, and then I'll bring it back in and put it in the polystyrene, and you'll see how it's come up. Okay, this is how it's come up in the end, and yeah, it still looks a bit sort of ordinary, but once we add some flocking onto that, you'll get a better idea of how it's going to look in the end. So yeah, this at this stage I would use as a sort of a background tree, because I don't really have a trunk planned for that, but we can add that on, I suppose, if we need to. Right folks, I've got a twig here which is fallen off probably one of our local gum trees here, and what I do to make a trunk is I assess the actual piece that I've got here and what looks about the right size trunk for the tree that I'm making, and I'm quite taken sort of with this end of it roughly, and what I'll do is cut it off and try and get the straightest part here, and also I don't want it too long, so I'll cut that off and then we'll see what we come back with. Right, so I've cut my trunk and I've found a piece with a bit of character. There's a bit sticking out of it and everything, and I've drilled a 2mm hole in each end to receive the wire, one from the tree and another piece of wire that will help to plant it into the scenery. So they'll be glued in when the tree's fitted into it. So we'll probably do the flocking first. Yeah, get that out of the way, and then we can work out what we're doing with the tree, with the trunk. So we'll just put that aside and we'll get back to the tree. Right, the next important thing is what colour are you going to have your tree, and if you've got flocking, well obviously you will have flocking to do this, take it in and put it near your back scene, or just have it in your railway room or wherever your railway is in the way that your railway is lit, and compare the colour of it to the rest of your railway and see how it looks, because there's lots of different greens and some of them just look awful. So it's best to always do a bit of a match and sort of work out what colours you want before you actually start sprinkling it on your tree. Now I use maybe 3 colours, sometimes 4, and I have a dark colour that goes underneath the tree, and you'll see all this happen soon, and then probably the major colour of the tree goes on, which is another shade, and then some other maybe even brighter colour just to do highlights here and there, and possibly a 4th colour. So it just depends how you feel at the time or what sort of look you want to achieve. So yeah, I'll take you over to the bench again and we'll see what colours we're going to use and see how we put them on. Right, I've got a selection of greens here. This is probably going to be the overall colour of the tree. This could be added on to give some sort of highlights here and there, or just to vary the colour a bit. This is the dark colour that will be going underneath. There's a bit of wire in there. And then there are various other ones here, even down to, this is a commercial flocking. The rest of these I made myself, but this is a commercial flocking. That does go very well, adding highlights onto the tree. But we have this colour here. So there's a number of, it might not look like it on the video camera here, but there are subtle variations in these greens. And this one in particular has fine stuff mixed in with it as well. So a combination of those, I think, especially with the highlights, should bring us up a reasonable tree. So what we have here, folks, is just a piece of greaseproof paper or baking paper laid over a piece of board. I will shake the flocking on over that paper so that I can recover whatever falls off the tree, and I'll be working over here, be holding the tree and using some cheap hairspray to spray on there to get the flocking to stick to it. Right, the first thing I'm going to do, folks, is I've got my dark flocking ready over here, and I'm going to spray the underneath of this tree with cheap hairspray. Just cheap hairspray, that's all we want. So we give it a good sort of go, just do a bit at a time, and once you've got the area moistened, just sprinkle on some flocking, like so, and then we'll move around to the other side, spray a bit more spray on there. you see it sort of go white when it's wet enough to receive the flocking, and that's just because it's wet and it will dry. Now a bit more up in the canopy here and underneath, we'll spray, we'll drop some more flocking on there. It's a messy job, and I've got my left hand in a glove, so because you tend to get hairspray on the hand that's holding the tree. So I'll just give it a bit of a tap, and I'll give it one more spray just to seal that. Right, now we're ready for another colour, so we'll just put that back in there for the moment, and I'll recover this flocking that I've spilled here. I'll just tip that back in to my container. I'll make a little chute for it. I can tip that back in. You can see I've lost a little bit there, but we won't worry about that. Now I've got my main colour here ready to go. So again, we'll do it a bit different this time. We'll hold the tree on its side and just spray a bit on there and add some of this flocking on to where we've sprayed, and then work my way around the tree. And a bit more on this side. And we'll go around and give it a bit of a spray. Also making sure we haven't missed any bits. I've missed a bit there. I'll use some of that off the paper for that. Now, that's where we are with that so far. So we'll just go through the same process again. We'll recover what we've got on the paper here back into the tray, and we'll look at another colour. This time I'll use this particular one. It's a mixture of sort of earthy colours there. Don't know how that'll go actually, but we'll give it a go. So now we're working on the top of the tree, or the tops of the tree. So I'll start in the mid sort of canopy here and sprinkle some of this stuff in there. And a bit more. And on the top now. And some of this will fall down the side as well, which is alright. And we'll just give that a bit of a spray to seal it there. Your trees smell very nice after this, I must say. Right, so there we are. It's a bit of an odd looking tree, that one, but we'll reassess. So again, we'll clean up and try and recover as much as we can. And there we are. So this is what we've finished up with. It's got some odd growth going on there, but that's alright. It'll probably be a reject in a model tree factory, but anyway, trees aren't perfect, so that's what we've got there. Now what we'll do is add the trunk on and glue it on and see what it looks like, and put the bit of wire in the bottom as well. And there we have our tree. The wire was super glued into the trunk, and the wire at the bottom was super glued in as well. You can see, if you get down low enough, you can see where it's cut off. It's a good idea to tease some of the lower branches down a bit. I've done that a little bit, but yeah. But you know, from a distance, which is, you know, normal viewing distance is about here somewhere. Well, that's only about 450 millimeters away. But yeah, so that's how it comes up. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with that one. I think that's okay. It's random enough to go on the layout actually. So here it is planted on the layout. So I think it goes in with those other trees fairly well. It's a big sucker of a tree. You can tell by the trunk on it. But yeah, I've disguised the bottom of the trunk with some undergrowth there. I can add some more in actually, which will be better. So yeah, so that's how it's done, folks. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Cheers, Gormo.